Alright, I'm about to tell you something about myself that might shake your confidence in everything I've ever said on this channel. But sometimes I still use textbooks to learn languages. Alright, so you all know my feelings about using textbooks to learn languages. And there's a few parts to the story that explains how I came to that conclusion. And it all starts with the status quo. Like I said, I'm familiar with this familiar, old, comfortable method of using textbooks to memorize grammar. You go to class every day, you start with chapter 1, you work your way through the textbook. This is the same normal routine that everyone follows, but never seems to provide any actual results. This method is sort of mundane and normal and boring, but for whatever reason, everyone thinks this is the way you go about learning a language. In fact, I've had a lot of pushback from people who I somewhat jokingly call the non-believers here on this channel, who leave me sometimes sort of nasty comments saying, "You don't know what you're talking about." I read my textbook from chapter 1 all the way until the end, and that gave me the basis on which to start my language learning journey. Or, if you never read a textbook, you won't have the fundamentals of grammar that you need in order to learn to speak the language. And I get all these people leaving comments about success stories that they claim they've had based on just reading textbooks. But the problem is, I honestly just don't believe it. But even when all of these non-believers leave their comments down below, I don't tell them to throw out their textbooks. This is not the Dead Poet Society. I don't think owning and using a textbook will automatically hamper your language acquisition. I just think if you focus on reading through the textbook as your main source of learning the language, it's going to keep you in the status quo. So the next part of my relationship with textbooks is what I call internal chaos. Because there was a period of my life when I was in middle school and I first started getting interested in learning languages. And I don't know why, but there was something inside me that was really fascinated with the idea of being able to learn a language. It was like the craving that I had. I took Spanish classes for all of my 8th grade year. And I just felt sort of lost in all of this grammar that I was supposed to be memorizing, but just couldn't because our brains aren't designed to learn stuff that way. And the chaos inside only got worse when I went through an entire year of Spanish classes and realized I couldn't understand any Spanish, and I certainly couldn't speak it. So it was this conflict of desire and reality that didn't mesh up in my life. And that spilled over into the next part of the story, which is external chaos. Because not only was there this conflict inside of me, but it spilled out into the real world when I would try to have conversations with people, and I just couldn't. And this was pretty embarrassing, but pretty often my family would go to a Mexican restaurant, or maybe there would be a Spanish speaker come to our church or something, and my mom would say, "Oh, Aaron, this person speaks Spanish. Have a conversation with them." And I'd be like, no, mom, no. And then she says, hey, my son speaks Spanish. And then I tried to have some sort of conversation in Spanish, and the only thing I'm thinking is I'm panicking, and I'm trying to run through grammar rules. I'm going through my verb conjugation charts, and nothing comes out. Or it just comes out in this word jumble, and my face is turning red. And this is just not this kind of situation that I wanted to be in. I specifically remember sometimes where I would say something wrong in Spanish and people laughed at me. And it's embarrassing. But then something changed in me once I was no longer in school. I wasn't taking classes. I left my textbook at home. And what I did is I moved to El Salvador, Spanish-speaking country, and I could have just as easily done this from home. I always say that you don't need to live in a country that speaks the language in order to learn the language. For me, that's what it took. But it's not because moving to that country was important. It's because moving to the country is what taught me the right process of learning a language. And the next step that I came to in the process is what I call internal order. Whereas before there was this conflict inside of me, wanting to master all of the grammar and wanting to kind of force myself through the textbook, doing everything that would allow me to pass the exam and not falling together in the right way, not teaching me to speak Spanish like I had expected. That was in the past. And then I moved towards an internal order, or a sort of inner peace of being okay with saying things wrong. And I realized my focus should not be on mastering grammar and learning to say things perfectly. My focus switched to having a successful communication with another human being. And that was easy. It was laid back, it was chill. My friends weren't there to judge my grammar with their red pen. They were there to work together with me, have a good time, laid back. And sometimes they would help me if I would ask them to teach me a little bit of Spanish, but it was a zero stress situation. And this was really sort of a pivotal moment for me in learning how to learn languages effectively. But this inner peace I had acquired along the way was not damaged by owning a textbook or flipping through it occasionally. On occasion, I still go through and look something up when I'm looking for a little grammatical tidbit that I've forgotten, or when I can't remember something interesting that I had read about the language before. And there are some textbooks out there that are really helpful for developing this mindset of using the language, not studying. So, no, I don't think using a textbook is going to harm your progress in some way. As long as you don't let the idea of mastering grammar bring you back to that internal chaos. You keep that internal order. It just feels so good to be stress-free about grammar. And that sort of mindset led me into the next part of my journey, which is what I call external order. Whereas before, I used to start up a conversation with a Spanish speaker, or more often my mom would start a conversation up for me with them, and the cogs in my brain would just start turning, and I would sort of panic. But now this internal order that I've sort of created for myself leads to external order as well. I am able to hold calm, collected conversations with people, joke around, laugh with them, pick up on their little social cues, and I learn to be okay if I miss a word that they said. When my focus is on the communication and on the conversation and on the friendship and on whatever I'm trying to say, the entire conversation doesn't fall apart by me having to stop and come up with the correct grammatical feature. Even if I make a mistake, or if I say something that I know is wrong, I just continue going along with the flow of the conversation, and almost no one even ever notices. And then after I came to this place of internal and external order, I went back to college and I minored in Spanish. And you know, the one thing about taking Spanish classes in college is you're gonna need a textbook. And that didn't hurt my ability to speak Spanish. If anything, it helped a little. Sometimes it is nice to know that one little bit of grammatical nuance. And then I say, hey, that's an interesting bit of grammar. I've always wondered about that, why people say things this way. And now this book sort of explained it to me. But I didn't let the compulsive need to speak correctly 100% of the time interfere with the real methods that I use to learn a language, which is calming down and just practicing and using the language in real situations. And now, I'm back home again, in Wisconsin. Same guy, same goals, same dreams, but now I speak Spanish. If you want to learn more about how you can go through the same process I went through that brought me to this place of internal and external order in language learning, check out this playlist. Now go into the world and learn that language.